Well, hello everyone. I'm Rob Chiroli and welcome to this Wisdom of Hindsight business webinar by Two Wise Heads. It's a collaboration between me and Paul Thewlis, who today will introduce us to the engineering of building an internet marketing machine. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Rob, and hello everyone who's joined us this morning or this afternoon now. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen in. I think you'll learn a lot from today's webinar on building an internet marketing machine. I built my first internet marketing machine over 6 years ago, and it enabled my company to sell online products with an individual item price of around $400,000 each.
Well, that's a big sale for online purchase, Paul. You normally associate online sales with much lower cost items.
Yes, Rob, I raise that because I think that many businesses don't think internet marketing is relevant to them. But whether you're selling $2 products on a short sales cycle, or $400,000 products on a long sales cycle, whether you're selling direct to customer or selling through a distribution channel, or whether you're providing any type of services really, internet marketing can be relevant. You just have to think through your business model and design an appropriate internet marketing system for that.
Okay, so there should be something for everyone in today's webinar. Before we go too far into the webinar, I just wanted to cover some basic housekeeping. I hope you all have your lunch and removed any distractions because we do have quite a lot to get through today. We want these webinars to be interactive, so we'd love you to send a question through at any time, or you can wait for our Q&A at the end. To do that, you'll see a box on the top right-hand side of the screen, like this one. Just type in your question, and we'll address it during the webinar, or Paul will follow up with you afterwards. I'll remind you all that a replay of the webinar will be sent to you, so don't try and get down any of the details. Just note down any jewels of information or immediate actions that you really find important. Okay, Paul, so in our promotion we talked about engineering marketing being more important than creativity. Can you explain why?
Yeah, I think our image of marketing in the past has been of some guys hanging out at a creative agency dreaming up brilliant ideas for TV or print ads. And in small business, we've watched what corporates do and tried to emulate their approach. More recently, this sort of brilliant idea concept has moved to coming up with internet viral marketing campaigns on YouTube or other social media. This type of marketing success is very visible, but it's hard to replicate, and frankly, I often think that the post-success explanation of the events which led to the campaign are different from what really actually evolved in the first place. The reality is that much of the corporate marketing attention now has moved to trialling, testing and tuning of internet marketing systems where it's easier to control the outcomes. In effect, it's an engineering exercise.
Okay, so how do you engineer then a successful marketing system?
Okay, so what you start with, Rob, is imagining your marketing system as like a production line, like our car production line that we can see here, with a number of separate stages. Each stage has to work effectively to achieve the outcome you need. If one of those stages, say in the middle of the line, is running slow or stops, then the whole line comes to a halt. It doesn't matter how well all the other stages are working, the line is only as fast as the slowest stage will allow. If you use this analogy for business marketing, what we find is that the majority of businesses focus on getting one or two stages working, but because they have no focus on the other stages, the whole marketing process fails or underperforms. In most cases, businesses realise the process has failed, but don't know where the problem has occurred, and they tend to blame the part that is working without realising it's the other stages that they haven't considered, which is causing the problem.
Okay, so the analogy seems clear enough, but the picture you're showing us is one of an old car production line. What does an internet marketing machine look like?
Okay, so here's a diagram representing what one would look like. It's made up of a number of interlocking components which don't actually work in a straight line way, like the car assembly line. So it can be hard to show this as an easily digestible diagram. So what I'm going to do is to break this machine into its various components so it's easy to understand.
So it seems to be, seems like a lot of moving parts. I think breaking it down is actually a good idea. So where do we start, Paul?
We'll start with what I call the core of the machine, and that's the business's website. In this website, we're going to have various public pages which contain service or product information that's relatively static. It may or may not include a shopping cart system. We might have a private login section for members or clients, or our distribution channel if we have that type of business. We'll have a blog which will publish news and articles. Finally, we'll have some specific landing pages for advertising campaigns which we'll discuss later.
And you're going to use WordPress to build this website, I see.
Well, I put the WordPress logo there to remind us that we need to decide on what web development platform or software we're going to use. At Web Intelligence, we use WordPress for various reasons, but there are other choices such as Joomla, Drupal, and etc. I'll be covering this sort of development area in more detail in an upcoming webinar.
Okay, so where to next, Paul?
Next, we're going to talk about sitting on a couch watching TV with your mobile phone in your hand, searching on Google while you have a perfectly good computer sitting on a desk somewhere else in the house. I don't know if you do it, but I certainly do. It seems to be a reality of the day of Google searches nowadays. This is, and that reality is that mobile phones and tablets are being extensively used for search for products and services from the home or the workplace. If your site is hard to use on a mobile phone or a tablet, then people who visit your site will just move on to the next site, one that's easier to use. You must have a web design that suits mobile.
And I guess needing to use the Zoom feature on your phone doesn't count as easy to use.
Yeah, spot on, Rob. Now, let's move on to a really important part of the machine, which is often overlooked or done poorly, and that's lead capture. It's not good enough to provide information about your products and services and passively sit back and expect people to call or email you. What people will do is say, okay, I've worked out what they have to offer when they visit your website. Let's keep looking to see what else is available. Chances are they will either forget which site they visited, and that could be yours, or they will keep going until they get a compelling offer from someone else, which you failed to give them in the first place. A compelling offer isn't limply inviting them to join your mailing list. Like, who do you know wants to be on another mailing list just for the fun of it?
All right, so we've got the message about what not to do pretty strongly. What do we do, Paul?
You have to make an offer of something in exchange for their contact details and their opt-in to a list. It needs to be a why wouldn't I type of offer. I generally prefer a free information offer on a topic that they have been searching for. So, for example, when I was marketing investment property, we offered a free 27-page guide to investing in a specific type of investment property. So, looking at our system diagram, we have an offer on our website which includes a form to complete. Attached to the form you have an autoresponder that automatically emails the free information back to the client, shown here on the right. So ideally the information from the form goes straight into your CRM, that's a customer relationship management system. A well set up CRM should also be able to link to your website to enable you to keep data on visits and activity by people you have recorded on your CRM. This can be very effective knowledge for your sales and marketing teams.
Well, that's great if you can get them to the site, but how do we get them there in the first place?
Yeah, fair enough, Rob. So let's go back to our machine and add what I call the fuel of our machine. That's the content. It's the words, images, and video content that we're going to use to attract people to our page. If it's video content, we can easily put it on YouTube and embed it in the website. and or contact people using YouTube itself, or sorry, not contact, attract them using YouTube itself. Our content can be sliced, diced and repackaged to be used on the page of our website, in our blog, in our social media, and let's not forget online or offline public relations. Use your content to become an expert in your field with the people that you want to target. So that's even if that's just being a big fish in a small pond. A term I use regularly with my clients is feed the DIY. It's feed the DIY. Most people are searching the internet to find out how they can do something or get something without having to pay someone else. But don't be afraid to use your intellectual property to inform them, because most people who are not professionals in your field don't realise how much work and expertise is involved. Once they find out what's involved, they realise they don't have the expertise or the time to do what you do. So, who will they ask for help? Well, the person, you, who has shared their knowledge and demonstrated their expertise.
Okay, but how do we get people to see the content or our fuel, Paul?
Well, here's the first place to start. It's perhaps the most controllable way of getting our internet marketing machine started. That's email marketing. We're going to use our existing client list, supplier list, prospect list to put together an email list. We send out emails to our list and tell them we have a great new website, but we only do that once. Then you need to bring your blog into play. Each blog post you do needs to be valuable, so as to make it it needs to be valuable, and it needs to be done in the sort of shortest possible way that we can. The mantra here is little, regular, often, and valuable. Little, regular, often, and valuable. Now, if you email your list, you tell them about your latest blog. Bring them back to your website whenever you can. You need to remember they will only keep opening your emails if your previous email has been valuable to them. So you might consider segmenting your database and only emailing certain content to certain segments.
Okay, so say we've got that happening, but we want to extend the reach of our marketing, get out beyond the people that we already know. What then, Paul?
So this is where SEO, pay per click, and social media come into play. Let's start with SEO, which is search engine optimization. SEO is about getting you to the top of a Google search. Many small businesses have been approached by companies offering to do this. In the past, some companies have done this by building links to your site by some dubious methods, to be honest. Over the last 18 months or so, this has changed, and Google has changed its search algorithms to sort of stamp out this spurious link building. But some of the people who have used that in the past have suffered over the last 18 months. A good SEO approach is to work out which search terms will help your business and which terms your business has a realistic chance of ranking highly in. Then you optimize the content and the coding of your website to those terms. This work should really be done by someone as they're building the site, really. You then work on building genuine links to your site by reaching out to people you think might be interested in your content. All the while you need to be looking at what your competitors are doing, copy what they do, and do it better.
This sounds quite technical, Paul.
It can be, and there are lots of tools that can help, but the SEO landscape is constantly changing, and you really do need someone who is up to the state of the art to do this work. It's also something which can take some time to have an impact, so businesses doing SEO need to be committed and they need to be patient to get the results.
Yeah, so what about those of us in a bit more of a hurry than that?
Well, part of the mix with your machine should be to include pay-per-click advertising. Now, this is an area where many small businesses have been a little burnt. They've tried pay-per-click, which seems simple enough, but it just didn't generate the cost-benefit return.
So what we're talking about here is the Google paid listings at the top and the side of Google searches, and the ads we see on Facebook at the side and more recently in the news feed. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly, Rob. They're very easy to set up, but they're deceptively hard to get right. I've spent sort of many classroom days and sat several exams with Google to get the level of training required to really be able to do this well. But here's where I think AdWords in particular fits in. AdWords being the Google search pay-per-click area. You've just built a new website, and the audio response systems we've discussed earlier are included, but you really don't know if they're going to work until people come to your site. Any website design is a best guess at whether it will be effective or not. So you don't want to wait several months for your SEO work to kick in only to find that your website isn't working as effectively as expected. AdWords can put you at the top of Google at a cost, of course, and generate you immediate traffic to your site. This means you can immediately get a reading on whether your site is working as effectively as you'd hoped, and then you can adjust it if it isn't working the way you'd hoped.
And if it all goes well, you might find that you generate enough business to justify those advertising costs.
True. But one of the big mistakes you'll see is people advertising using AdWords and just sending people to their homepage. Generally, if you're expecting a good result on your advertising investment, you want to design a landing page specifically for your AdWords visitors. This is why I included those landing pages as a separate page in our website core earlier on. But let's move on to social media. This is an area where many businesses have developed a presence, but it's not really been worth the effort. This is because the extent of their social media effort has been to really set up an account page and do a few posts. You need a social media strategy which integrates with the rest of your internet marketing machine. We're going to cover social media in more detail in an upcoming webinar, but here are just a few thoughts for now. Firstly, don't treat your social media like an aerobics class, where you go to your first class, overexert yourself, suffer the muscle pain, and you don't go back in the end. Regular, consistent social media posts that stay on message, not spurious, bits and pieces that you're putting in there, and keeping on your subject area are a preferable way to go. Use your content we discussed earlier and cut it down into small bite-sized bits for social media distribution. My view is your posts on social media need to be driving people back to your blog. A good example of this is a site that I have coming in on my Facebook, The Economist magazine. Their Facebook posts come in very regularly, several times a day actually, and they are pushing people back to their magazine website. What you're trying to do is drive people back to your website, as they do, where you can offer them your products, services, and giveaways that we've talked about earlier.
Okay, so you've got Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter in the diagram there. What social media do you think is best to use?
That'll depend upon what your product or service is, and who your target market is, and how you distribute your product or service. Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn are not the only social media platforms you could use, but generally they're the three you would look at first. Facebook clearly is the largest, has the largest number of users, so you can't ignore that. And there's some great demographic targeting on Facebook as well. Combining all three platforms can be useful. Sometimes you can find a person on one social media platform and reach out to them on another. The key to social media strategies is reaching out to key influencers in your market. There are some great tools available now to identify these people, So what you want to do is identify which social media platform your influencer is on and reach out to them. What you want to achieve is an outcome where the influencer is sharing your information. It's sort of not unlike the internet version of getting an interview on a radio show.
So what's the social media manager, Paul?
There's various software online which enable you to manage your social media activity in one place, so it's all a bit easier to manage and control. Social media is getting busier. There are also social media managers which help you, which can keep an eye on your actual social media connections and make decisions about when to send your social media post automatically rather than manually, so that more people will see it. There's a lot more we could cover on social media, but let's go back to the overall diagram of the marketing machine. There's a couple of areas I still need to cover. On the bottom left of the diagram, I've added a transaction box. This is a small box for what can be a much more extensive part of the system. But we're focusing on marketing here, but I've added it more as a sort of a postscript, really. Typically, this would involve a payment from an e-commerce shopping cart, but also those in the service industry shouldn't ignore automatic payments and automatic appointment booking. We're implementing an appointment booking system for a client at the moment which incorporates the credit card system, so you get the whole thing together. Online booking systems can be very powerful because they take bookings out of business hours and get people off their market immediately. You don't let people wait to ring you for an appointment in the morning because they could forget, or worse, they could book with your competition who are providing an online booking system. These systems can also save a lot of administrative time. They have the ability to also integrate in with cloud-based accounting systems as well.
Okay, you had some items around the edges of this machine diagram earlier which we haven't covered, Paul, so let's go through those.
Yeah, so on the left of the diagram are functions which need to be done to maintain our machine. At the bottom is hosting, which is providing the computer facilities for the website. I strongly recommend that you have the people who built your website manage the hosting as well. That means that if something goes wrong where the site's not working, there's no finger pointing between the different service providers. You know, the web developer says it's not their fault, the hoster says it's not their fault. One company has to have a single point responsibility to make sure the site is operative at all times. Then you'll need to sort of manage the content, the fuel that we talked about. And this is sort of maybe a sort of a new area for many organisations, but as content is our fuel, it needs to be sort of constantly updated and re-edited for use in different ways. Often it's the business owner or manager who does this because they're the sort of holder of the intellectual capital, if you like, of the business. But they're often too busy to get this done effectively or in the end at all, so it falls by the wayside. It may need an additional internal or external resource to operate this sort of side of things. And finally, as we're running an ad campaign with our pay-per-click, that needs to be managed as well. So Google has a system for managing its ads, and so do Facebook and others. So you need to keep an eye on the ads to make sure that they're running cost effectively.
Okay, so that leads us into the last part of the marketing machine diagram, the analytics. I know that's an area that you think is particularly important.
Yes. Analytics is perhaps where the sort of real engineering comes into the story. Analytics is our eyes into the working of the machine. So imagine you're standing at a doorway at the end of our car production line that we were talking about before, and the production line sort of just sticking out the doorway. All you get to see is what comes off the end of the production line. If the product's coming off the end of the production line, well, that's great, but we don't really know if the product could have come out faster or cheaper. if the product's coming out faulty, then we have no idea what's going wrong. It's the same for our internet marketing machine. Many businesses have a basic Google Analytics set up for their website, but they commonly don't look at their analytics, or if they do, they don't really understand what it's saying. This is the equivalent of standing at the end of our production line, as I've described. Too many business people say the internet's not working for their business or it's not relevant, but in most cases this is because they haven't really analysed what they've been doing. A good engineering approach is to measure everything that's happening, including testing new parts of the system you add to optimise the performance. And that's way more than just sort of putting a bit of analytics code on your website. Each component of our machine can be measured, and each piece of content we use can be measured for its performance.
Okay, Paul, so that's a lot to absorb in a short space of time, and there are many parts of this internet marketing machine that will be foreign ground for many people listening online or looking at the replay. Where do they go from here?
Rob, it's almost endless where you could take all this. I recently went to a conference in the USA and heard about the huge investment that companies like Coca-Cola are putting into online. They have whole departments doing functions like just monitoring social media. Most of our listeners have small business working on tight budgets, so what I've designed is a sort of a low-cost next step, which is to help businesses design their own internet marketing machine. It's a one-day workshop where we'll have a maximum of 10 people. It'll be face-to-face, and I'll walk participants through designing their own internet marketing machine for their own business. I've put in a huge amount of time developing this knowledge, and I've lots of tools that I use that I'll be sharing. It's going to be really a low-cost leg up into succeeding with internet marketing. So we can speak and create freely. I'm restricting registration so that we don't have competitors working in the room together. We'll only have one business from each industry, and the cost is going to be $395 for the day.
That sounds like a really valuable day, Paul. So we'll send you all registration details after the webinar, or if you're watching the replay of the webinar, then you'll see a link to the registration details on the page where you'll be watching the video. Now, while you're all typing in questions for Paul, I'd like to remind you about our next Two Wise Heads webinar, which is in 2 weeks from now. It's called a 15-part method to developing high-performance teams. And I'll be talking about building effective teams, whether you've got a team of 2 or 22.
And can I remind everyone they can see the replays of our previous webinars on our website as well. That's twowiseheads.com.au. I think our last SWOT webinar that we did 2 weeks ago would be an important one to watch for anyone considering coming to the Internet Marketing Machine workshop.
Cool. Okay, so if anybody's got some questions, please pass them through. I've got a couple here already, Paul. So obviously you've struck a chord with some of the people online.
That's good to hear.
Kate has asked, you talked about various tools that you use. Do these cost much, and where do we get them?
Okay, so there's lots of different tools that come from various different organisations doing things. Some of those tools are free. Some of them have sort of a free part of them, and you pay more for an extended license. And really, some of those tools sort of really are ones that you're probably better off having an agency do, because they are a bit expensive, and they do take a bit of time to learn and understand. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we'll be talking about in the next workshop that I've talked about. But they come from a whole range of different diverse small organisations who've done innovative things with tools.
Okay, cool. Got a question here from Simon, who asked that you've used the term reaching out a few times. And he wants to know what you mean by that exactly.
Okay, so that involves using one of our tools that we talked about. We're able to identify people who are communicating to our target market frequently. And people, they've got lots of followers and they do quite a bit of communicating. So what we'd like to do is to be able to have our content shared by that particular person, or it could be even an online magazine or something like that. So what you have to do is sort of develop a two-way relationship. So online, it's not much different than what you would do with a face-to-face relationship. So you follow them on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever it might be. So you make connection. You sort of you might do if it's on LinkedIn, for example, you probably make a connection and then send them a message and say, hi, I'm joining because I know so and so and blah blah blah, and you start up a dialogue basically. Then what you might do then is you might share some of their information with your group of people, your group of followers, and then let that person know that you've done that, and sort of gradually build a relationship with them where they start to take an interest in what you're doing. And over a period of time, there's a bit of a two-way thing. You share some of their information and they share some of yours, and that's then they start linking back to your content in the same way that you'd be linking to theirs. And that's really what sort of reaching out might mean. You could also go to a magazine and offer them an article or something like that. Really not unlike sort of old school ways of doing things. Try and get a regular spot on through an online magazine or in an industry forum or something other like that. You're looking for some external place that you can actually provide your expertise, I suppose. So that would be an example of how you would do that.
Okay, good. Thanks for that, Paul. Next question I've got is actually close to my heart as well, and David's posed it. He said he's asked whether we should have a separate website for our desktop and one for our mobile phones or tablets and so on.
Yeah, sure. So there's probably two types of strategies here. One is to have a separate mobile website, and then the other is to have what's called a responsive design website, which is a responsive design website, I think, is mostly relevant for small to medium businesses, because what you do there is you design one website. You only have to maintain one lot of content, and then if what your website does then is it adjust its design to fit the device that people are using. So whether that's a desktop, whether that's a tablet, whether it's a mobile, and they're all different shapes and sizes of screen and that sort of stuff. You want a site that's just going to adjust itself to fit that. And it's sort of quite fun looking at a site in a desktop browser and just squeezing it from a wide screen to a narrow screen. And if you see the design, you'll know if it's a new responsive design website because it will adjust its design to fit into that screen size. If you go the other way and have a separate mobile website, what you end up as having two sites that you're trying to maintain, and I think that's probably more relevant for a larger implementation and a sort of corporate implementation type of situation where you've got the resources to do that.
Yep, okay, that makes sense, Paul. Chloe asks whether you can give us an example of the type of content we could put on a blog or a social media post.
Okay, so most businesses have knowledge that to them is just day-to-day stuff. It's the sort of things they say to their clients every day of the week. And to them, it's almost self-evident. And they forget that people don't know what they know. So what I recommend to my clients is they have what I call a little blog book, which is a little notebook that you carry around with you. And when you come out of a meeting with a client, an appointment, you just have a think to yourself and say, now, what did I talk about there? And you'll find that there is a piece of information that you gave the person you're talking to. And you make a note of that. And then you might get, a list of those sorts of items. And then when it comes to sort of going, okay, what can I share on my social media? You go back and you look at your list of items. Now, from there you can, you may already have that information written up somewhere. So you just take it from a brochure or from perhaps an internal technical document or whatever, and you share that. Now, it'll depend upon where you're sharing it, but I generally would suggest that you want to keep your content to a size that you think the people are going to keep their patience looking at it. So, so if I was writing for a blog, it might be 5-6 paragraphs, something like that, with a bit of a diagram or a photo or something like that. If you're writing it obviously for a Facebook post or something like that, you're going to make it, pretty short, sharp. So you want to be able to, but when you're developing this content, keep it in the one place on your computer or wherever that you can come back to and keep coming back to and editing and cutting it out and changing it around. The other way of going is to use, and this is where I find Twitter really useful. Twitter is a great place of keeping in contact with people who are thought leaders in your particular industry. So, maybe in my case, it's keeping in touch with perhaps people working with corporates in the US and looking at what the leading edge things that they're doing. Take that information and say, well, okay, I understand that because I'm in the industry, but how can I reword that for my small business clients who have a different need? So you can take other people's information and repackage it. You don't always have to be the one that's coming up with the content. That's a couple of ideas.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Look, we've got 2 more questions, so we'll I'd love to finish off soon. But Amanda's asked, and this one's close to my heart as well. She's tried AdWords without any real success. What should we do to get better results with AdWords?
Okay, so there's a lot better measurement these days with AdWords than perhaps some may have done in the past. So you're definitely linking your AdWords up with your Google Analytics, and you're getting you do an end-to-end measurement from your beginning of your AdWords ads right through to the dollars that are being paid at the end if you've got a payment online sort of system. But certainly in terms of generating leads, you really have to make sure, as I said earlier, that you've got a landing page that is really matches the ad, and maybe you have several versions of the ad, several versions of the page, and you keep working with it until you get something that works for you, and you come down to a real cost-benefit analysis. You're actually working out if you're paying $1 on AdWords, are you making $2? That type of thing. You've basically got to sort of say how much of the let's say for every $100 that I bill out to a client or I get from a client, how much of that can I spend on my advertising? If that's sort of $20, then you say, well, okay, I'm prepared to pay $20 in AdWords to get a result. So that's probably the first part, is sort of really measuring the process. Your landing page has got to be very focused on what you're trying to achieve. Often that's trying to just really capture information. There's a 2-stage sales process. So, for example, Rob, with what you're doing, if you wanted to get people to perhaps get an eDisc analysis, their personality profile, you wouldn't necessarily do a landing page that says buy an eDisc profile right here and now. You might say, the first thing I want to do is I want to actually sell them on giving me their name, an email address, and perhaps their phone number, and get a relationship going with them. So what your ad needs to focus on, what do you have to sell to them? Maybe sell them something for free in the beginning to get a relationship, because it might take 2 or 3 steps from there to actually get a sales result. So there are a couple of considerations.
Okay, and then the final one here from Danny. Wants to know whether you can give us some more ideas about offers that we can make on our website.
Yeah. So I prefer information, because that's, I think, what people are generally looking for on Google. You can make discount offers and all of that sort of stuff. You can run competitions. I find that competitions, in my experience, both online and offline, has tends to be that people tend to be focused on the prize rather than the thing you're trying to sell. So I think your competition has to really make sure that you're targeting the people who are genuinely interested in going to be buying your product at the end. But coming back to that information area, so a couple of areas that may be of interest is, top 10 tips type of things, free guides. To-do lists are one I've done with a client with a mortgage broker. A first-time owner's to-do list about buying your own property, your first property, and that sort of stuff, or a property investor's guide to-do list to doing that. So those sorts of things. Use your intellectual property. Give away a bit of your intellectual property for free. Demonstrate your skills, because that's what they're looking to feed the DIY. They're looking to learn how to do things.
Yep.
So that's a couple of thoughts.
Okay, excellent, Paul. Look, that's all the time we have today for questions. I think we've used up our lunch break, so thanks for that.
That's okay. So just before we close, though, Rob, can I say that the diagram that we've been using for this presentation will be available for free on the web page where the replay of this webinar is showing. So you just fill out the contact form and it'll be automatically emailed to you.
Excellent, Paul. I think everybody will want to get that, as it provides a great overview. And I'll just provide another reminder about our next webinar in 2 weeks' time. The 15-part method for developing high-performance teams, which I think it's a great thing. So, Paul, thanks for the webinar. It's great to see such complexity put together in a simple-to-understand way. So how can people contact you if they have any further questions about the content or the workshop you're running?
Okay, so our contact details are on the Two Wise Heads website. And you'll see on the slide that's showing at the moment my email address and Rob's also. So I look forward to hearing from you all. Thanks.
Excellent. Yep. So thank you all for listening in today. We do look forward to you joining us again in a couple of weeks' time at the same time. Until then, may all your business decisions be wise ones. Goodbye, everyone.